Okay, Mayor, you're live. Okay, Mayor, you're live.
Good. Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning, everybody. This is a special meeting that we had called last week. We asked representatives from Berkeley Electric to come in and meet with us. We as a town will be having our afternoon meeting virtual, and they requested that they meet with us virtual. So this meeting is being done in that format. As a town, we prepared a list of questions that we had sent to Berkeley last week, I guess. And I know that there are questions that the folks that are watching this may have. Let me just read here to make sure I say it all correctly. It is important that you use the Q&A feature located in your Zoom control panel and not the chat feature. So if everybody understands that, it's the Zoom control panel and not the chat feature. So I will be turning it over to our representatives from Berkeley, but I want to emphasize to the community at large that's listening to that, please send in your questions. If you don't hear what answers to the concerns that we all had on that on December 26th, please share them right now. This is very important. I want to thank the representatives from Berkeley, and Happy New Year to you all for doing this morning. But I think it's important that, to good use of everybody's time, the questions are asked and answered as best as everybody can. So with that, I'll turn it over to our lead representatives from Berkeley. I'm not sure who that is at this particular
time. Mr. Mayor Burt with Berkeley Electric will introduce our panelists.
Okay, please.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Mayor.
Just so that everybody knows, I'm Mayor John Labriola. All of the members of council are online. Stephanie Tillerson, our town administrator, is online. Stephanie Broswell. So we have our staff with us. So please go ahead.
All right. Good morning and Happy New Year. On behalf of Berkeley Electric Co-op, I would like to thank the mayor, the council, and the town administrator, and the members that are, on the screen today. We want to be able to give you the opportunity to explain the events of the uncharacteristic outage that occurred on December 26th. So thank you again for that. Our mission is to be committed to providing safe, reliable, and affordable energy. Furthermore, our values are to strive to embody service, teamwork, honesty, and dependability. So just wanted to make sure, we are here for you. And now I'd like to introduce, each person involved in a daily and on our actual meeting right now. So it would be Mr. Tim Mobley. He's a professional engineer, and he's the Vice President of Engineering and Operations. Thomas Barnett, he's also a professional engineer, and he is the Manager of Construction and Maintenance. Mr. Scott Bennett, he is on the island. He is our district line superintendent. So he's the guy that's in the field. He's the one coordinating everything. As well, my boss, Tony Vincent, he is the Vice President of Marketing and Government Affairs. And also, we asked Miss Olivia Roig, Manager of Communications. I just want to make sure that, I asked Mr. Tim that we would give about 20, 25 minutes, if that's okay with y'all, and make sure we utilize that time, if that's okay with everybody. And if he needs to address it more, that's fine, just in that sequence of events. And at this time, I would like to turn this over to Mr. Tim Mobley. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Bert. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Definitely appreciate the opportunity to be with you. And obviously, we prefer to see you in person and to be with you in the same room, but unfortunately not able to do that. So we're going to take our best shot at what we're doing here today. And, we saw the questions that were turned in. I might have received even a couple more via email. I think everybody should have gotten the letter that we sent out. that kind of walk through what happened. What I would like to do, and y'all could stop me if it doesn't seem to be going in the right direction that you won't, is sort of go through things again, looking at a couple of things off of my screen, more from an educational standpoint, just to look at what happened again. And some of it will be similar to what was in the letter. Okay, so I know we're short on time, so I'm gonna jump right in if that's okay. And share my screen and go from there. And at some point when we go to Q&A or whatever else we do, Thomas or Scott will jump in, as it applies to them. So can everyone see the map?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we sent a similar map out along with the letter, I believe. Is that right, Libby? So just a quick overview again. Obviously, you recognize Kiowa Island, and I'm not sure if you can see my little cursor, my little hand. But you recognize Kiowa Island.
Yes.
As we said in the letter, we have 2 stations on Kiowa Island, Vanderhorst Station and the Kiowa Station. We refer to them as switching stations. They're also called regulator stations. They give us flexibility in the way we can switch load in the island and around the island, but they also regulate voltage. So that's the purpose they serve. Those stations have been in place for a long time, for years, upgraded different times along the way. The other substation that we mentioned that's important to be aware of is what we call our Seabrook sub, which is just on Johns Island near Resurrection Road. And by the way, the name Seabrook goes back to the 70s, I think, when Seabrook first got developed. So that's why it's named that. And once we name a sub, a lot of reasons why we have to keep the name that way. But it does serve Kiowa Island as well. Then I'm gonna bounce over to the other side of the screen and what we call our Lagreeville sub. It is also a source to Kiowa Island. So those 2 substations, Seabrook and Lagreeville, for lack of a better expression, are the power supply to Kiowa Island, okay? The Lagreeville sub, I'm gonna focus on that a little bit more in just a little bit. So I'm gonna come back to it. So I'm actually go back over to Seabrook sub. Because we were doing some upgrades in Lagreeville, the morning of the outage, we had all of the load being served out of Seabrook. I'm talking about on Kiowa Island. And as you know from the letter and from probably other conversations, we got into issue with load. One of the power transformers at Seabrook sub went out because of load. So there's 2 power transformers there. When that happened, obviously our guys had to go to the station, make sure we didn't have any other issues there. Once they realized that, they energized that power transformer, began to bring load back on to Kiowa Island. And as we mentioned in the letter, there's that phenomenon called cold load pickup. And I won't go into any more detail on that and what folks may want, or if anybody has any questions about it. But by nature of that, if load has been off for a while, and particularly when it's cold, you have to put some load on. The load will spike up 2 to 5 times what it was originally. So you have to let that settle down, and then you put some more load on. That cold load pickup scenario is the primary reason why it took so long. And I know, unless you deal with this every day, that's probably something that doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's just the way it is. So it's a phenomenon that happens when things have been out and weather's cold and heaters are on. But we have to energize all of our cables, all of our transformers, all the load, and all that stuff gets, quote, cold. And the word cold, not necessarily related to cold weather, it's just when things have been out for a while, so they haven't been energized. Now, what's ironic about this, and I think I mentioned that in the letter, is that we were being proactive and we were doing upgrades over there that frankly put us in a position that if we ever lost a power transformer, effectively, we would not have a long outage. We would be able to get folks on very quickly. So I'm gonna bounce over to the Lagreeville Substation and gonna put our attention there a little bit. Lagreeville Sub is the one that we were upgrading. It had one power transformer in it up until now. And it's been that way for a good while. So go back really in 2019, we ordered another power transformer for Lagreeville Sub. Those power transformers could take a year even without a COVID situation, but I know a lot of folks are getting tired of hearing COVID, pandemic, and sometimes it can sound like just an excuse, but the reality is it has affected deliveries of times and materials, it's affected labor in our industry, and so we've ran into delays that frankly we didn't know we would run into. And again, that's not an excuse. We don't look for excuses over here where we are in providing power to our folks, but it's just a fact. But Lagreeville Sub, we were proactively working on it and expanding it. And ultimately that situation is what led us to what happened on December 26th. I'm gonna share another thing here real quickly. Can, at least one or two nods. Can you see the screen? Okay. So, all right, this was actually from a PowerPoint I did to our board back early 2020. You got to remember now we're in 2021. To get approval to do this upgrade. I mean, it was in our budget. It's been our plans for years. We have long range plans and we look out 5 years, we look out 20 years. So it just came time to actually get it done. And I don't know if you can see all this. Actually, all the writing on the right's blocked from the your pictures, actually, my picture. But anyway, I don't know if you can read the writing on the right. I can't see all of it on my screen right now. But this project was to handle two things, to obviously put us in position to handle more load, because things have been growing, but also to do what we call an N-1 contingency. That's a power industry standard terminology. And that N-1 contingency means that if we lose a power transformer, we can still continue to serve all the load without any issues. So the irony of this whole situation is that the Lagreeville Sub was being built and constructed to be able to put us in position that if a transformer went out, we could get people back on quickly. Okay. And so and what I want to point out on the screen, if you can see that drawing, the green portions of that drawing, the green on my screen, are the areas where changes needed to be made to the station. So you can see there's these two items here. If you can follow my cursor, a power transformer. The green one represents the new power transformer that's being installed. Okay, so I just want to show that to you. I'm going to scan down now. You should see a photo, an overhead photo of a station. That is the Lagreeville Substation. Okay, that we've been talking about. And not to get in a lot of detail in this, obviously you expect us to take care of this and you not have to worry about it. But you can see to the left of your screen, two big pieces of equipment. Those are the two power transformers. So we used to have one, we added a second. What I want to point out to you on this drawing is again, there's a lot of interconnection inside this station. All of this bus work's tied together. It has to be, it needs to be, because you want to be able, again, if you lose one of those power transformers, you got to be able to switch, put everything on the other power transformer and back and forth. So again, the station's being upgraded to be able to provide additional ability to do those type of things. I just want to show to you that picture because of at some point in this project, they were going to have to take this sub out of service for what was supposed to be a very short period of time in order to make some final connections safely. In other words, they couldn't get up in there and work in it safely without this whole thing being energized. That time period was supposed to be very short. Thomas, can you tell me how long that was supposed to be?
Yeah, Tim. So originally, it was like an 8-week interval actually to what we were planning, and when we took it down and plans to re-energize was around 8 weeks.
Okay. So, and what I'd like to say to you also is that in all of our planning and building new substations, which Thomas has been doing this for a lot of years for us, but we, as a standard practice, we try to bring new stations on April, May, or October, November, whenever, temperatures are mild. They're not too hot and not too cold. That is our standard practice. The goal and intention all along was for this station to be completed and to be online before the end of November. Okay, that was always the plan, always the intention. But again, the delays that we mentioned, material and contractor delays, and some of them occurring really close to the end of it, is what set us back there. Not an excuse, just a fact. I'm gonna scroll through some of these that I really don't know. It's just some pictures of some of the construction. Hope that's not making anybody dizzy. I'm just gonna fast forward towards another drawing on another picture. When on Monday morning, after the
Tim,
outage,
excuse me, could I just ask you, I don't know if you want to take questions, but just so that I understand, was the end of November the end of 8 weeks?
yeah, again, Thomas, you might be able to answer that more specifically, but our expectation was it would be energized, and we started that process at least 8 weeks before then, right, Thomas? So,
That's correct. Yeah, I think we took it out right at the end of September, early October when we took it out. So the 8 weeks should have taken us to right around in November to the very beginning of December.
So the condition that we found ourselves in on December 26th have been going on all of October, all of November.
that's correct.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That's correct?
We had no functional substation at Lagreeville starting in October. Is that what I'm hearing?
In this station here, that's correct.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thomas, correct me if I say anything wrong now.
So that's right. We took it out of service. We did some preliminary work to get to the point of where we were ready to take it out of service. And but
I have a follow-up question then. If you knew it was going to be out of service and you were waiting on material and contract labor problems to be resolved, why wasn't it either A, brought back online until such time as you knew you had what you needed in place, or two, you did what you are now proposing to do now, which is to have a mobile substation over there at that time, just in case something like this were to happen?
Yeah, well, again, that goes back to the meeting I was going to say we had on Monday morning, the Monday morning quarterback, and then looking back and that type of thing. That's a very good question. If we had it to do over again, frankly, we would have done what I'm showing on this picture and put the mobile in service. That's what we did. But we had all confidence that it was going to be done. And then once we got to that point, it was a decision on, we're looking at weather forecasts, weather predictions, and probably trusting those a little too much, to be honest, because we're going to be honest, transparent with you. And even up until a week before Christmas, we weren't expecting sub-freezing temperatures. And also, I'll say this, we really weren't expecting the load to behave the way it behaved. So sometimes even in your projections and your plans, you're expecting based on history and based on other things you've seen, and you're projecting loads, and it's not always an exact science. So it did, the load exceeded our expectations. I'll put it. I'll say that. So what we did Monday when we got together, not to put ourselves in that situation again, our folks got together, Thomas, Scott, a bunch of other people involved. And what you see in this picture is the mobile sub. You see the two trucks, the mobile sub. So what we had to do was build, you see that overhead power line? We had to build an overhead power line all the way around the substation so that we could put the mobile in, and Thomas can speak more specifics about it, and interconnect the mobile and energize that overhead line that Scott Bennett and his people built last week, and be able to energize that line and energize some of those cables that go from Lagreeville over to that Vanderhorst station. Okay, so that's the situation that we have right now. And even there's more work that we have to do there that our guys working on now has to do with reading meters. So they're out there now installing some other equipment temporarily to be able to, because we remotely read our meters. So they're doing that as well as we speak. So I guess what I would say to you is, knowing that all that would have had to been done, and looking at what we believed the load was going to be, and what we believed the weather was going to be, and what we believed that the contractor was going to be able to do and when they were going to be able to do it, we didn't do all of this back then. Now going forward, if we ever have another station upgrade like this, Thomas, we've already talked about it, it'll be hard, fast. We won't look at we won't even pay attention to what Bill Walsh says or anybody else. We will put what we have to have in place and make sure as we go into December, we don't have that situation. Again, I know, after having happened what happened, those are all very valid questions, and I appreciate those and respect those, and hopefully
In your planning, do you take into consideration the increase in the number of people that are visiting Seabrook and Kiowa Island?
Well, what we actually do is we look at historical information, and it's seasonal, summer, winter, and just by nature of that, how many people have been on the island during those times are included in our projection. So when we do we have two plans that we do. It's called a long-range engineering plan, which looks out 20 years. Another one, which is a construction work plan, which looks out 5 years. And it looks at historical data, it looks at growth that we project. So by nature of the history, we're gathering that. And if there's some event that's going to take place, like I know the PGA is coming up this coming year, which is, we want all this stuff in place, and it will be before then. Those things are in consideration as well. We would not have ever had this project going on with something like a PGA tournament, for example, and knowing that's coming. So I know that's coming this year. But yes, ma'am. So through that data and through those records, it's considered.
Thank you.
I have a comment, and again, not to be argumentative, and I appreciate your effort here, but it just sends chills to me. October, November is hurricane season. So this thing was taken, I mean, I understand renovation and bringing in new equipment and all that, and I applaud the effort for doing it. But we were at risk. I mean, the irony of it is that it turned out to be 2 cold days. Wonder if there would have been a storm. Wonder if there had been just a November storm or October storm like we certainly get here, and this would have occurred. We all would have been in a horrible position. I mean, as it was one bad day of cold weather, but I'm not sure I understand October, November being ideal times to do something like this and not to let us know what you were doing. I mean, this whole community was at risk for 2 months during hurricane season. I'm not following.
Well,
I don't understand that in terms of a rationale in terms of an ideal time to do something like this.
So yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I understand. I would unfortunately for us in South Carolina, hurricane season is May 1st through what, the end of November and October. And then in the summertime, July, August, September, loads are through the roof, and we have numerous thunderstorms. And when we get into December, January, February, March, although it's rare, we can have the potential of ice storms. It really is no good time, quite frankly, in the course of the year, in the environment we're in. There's no perfect time. When I said October, November, in April, May, that is specifically load related. So we only pick those dates because if there is switching that needs to be done, right, to put them online or whatever, you don't want to do that switching when the load is excessive. So yeah, we well understand the hurricane scenario, storm scenario, extreme temp scenario. So the project can be going on for as long as a year, but those times are just chosen for switching purposes. So again, this is a pretty unusual project, quite frankly. We don't, I mentioned it again, ironically, the N-1 contingency we were shooting for here, which we will have when this is completed and within the next month, the next few weeks. So we were trying to get ourselves in position to not have those type of things. We don't have any other, most of the subs we build, by the way, are new subs, right? Brand new subs. We don't have to take anything out of power to connect, right? If that makes any sense. So we can build it from beginning to end. We don't have to de-energize anything. When the station gets done, then we can just switch load over to the new station. So this type of project, it required that out. We expected that to be a shorter duration.
So as a matter of practice for Berkeley, when you would go through this in any other situation, the notion of this emergency truck that's there, you would not be having that ready to go. You don't prepare for, I don't mean to say again, you're not preparing for a what if, cold weather, hot weather, storms, or whatever. You would take the substation down for a period of time and just hope that you can get through that period of time before you have to re-energize everything.
Again, we don't have this type of project very regularly. So, but can I share one other thing with you, Mayor, regarding that question? That sub, that mobile that we talked about, maybe another picture of it. That's the tail end. That's part of it there that you see. It's the only mobile substation that Berkeley has at this time. Okay. And we serve the Tri-County area. So we have intentionally tried not to dedicate it to a location, have it flexible, because the power outage y'all saw is something unfortunate that we wish we certainly would have avoided, obviously. We did not want that to happen. But when we're thinking about the big scheme of things, we've got other transformers and other subs that could go out for other reasons. And so we don't usually, we try not to tie it up. It's more of an emergency situation, okay? However, what I want to show you, share with you, and there's another picture of that mobile sub, by the way, is that we do have a new mobile sub that we are purchasing. Thomas, can you chime in on when we're planning that? I mean, I know it's been like a lot of the delays we've had with COVID, but can you chime in on when that we'll have that sub real quick?
Yes, sir. The new one should be, we're looking at middle to late spring on delivery. And so by the April, May timeframe of this year. So.
Okay, and so they're expensive, but a lot of stuff is expensive. But our plan all along, actually, especially with the new facilities at Johns Island. I'm sure you guys are familiar with a new office complex and all that we have there. We're going to take the mobile that you saw at Lagreeville in those pictures, and we're going to station it at Johns Island. So it's going to be parked in those bays there at the Johns Island office of Berkeley Co-op. This new one will be the one that we pull wherever, whenever we need it, because we have other stations that have different makeups and arrangements. So that was already in motion as well, that we would have two mobile subs. And Mayor, back to your point, yes, at that point, we would feel much more comfortable proactively dedicating one of those mobiles in a situation like this. I honestly don't see a lot of these situations in our future, to be honest.
Tim, this is Dan Prickett. It sounds like, if I can read you correctly, and I think I do, the takeaway from all of this is, in the future, faced with a circumstance like you were faced with here, where you were taking down a substation in order to...
Winner Cameron Hall made history as the first ever Black woman to anchor NBC's Today Show.
Sorry, when you would take down a substation, and in this had some backup in its own right, you would put in in rethinking it, you would put in this kind of a mobile sub and run it during the period, so you had, in effect, another routing while you were doing the work on the other one, which would have prevented, obviously, this circumstance from occurring going forward, right? Is that the...
Yeah, and some of your audio cut out, sir, in the beginning, but I think I heard most of it. But especially with that second mobile, again, we would want to be extra careful with one mobile tying it up, and then we have some emergency somewhere else. If you can even imagine, it could even be worse. The power transformer actually fails, for example.
Right.
But our contingency, our plan, would I love to have this new mobile 5 years ago? Yeah, probably so. But as we go forward, when we get this, that if we have a situation like this again, I don't know any reason why we would not station one of these mobiles at that station.
So could I say a couple things? So as it pertains specifically to the outage on the 26th.
Yes, sir.
So you've talked about having a 5-year forecast and a 20-year forecast, and those are really for planning purposes. Those aren't really what I would consider an operational forecast. Surely you have some forecasting that says, what do we think our requirements for power are going to be for the next week or for the next day or for the next 3 days? And those are, in my opinion, dependent on near-term events like the weather being in the 20s, or the fact that more people are staying down here for an extended period because of COVID, or whatever the reasons are. And it would seem to me that, and not to oversimplify this, because my power was out all day too, is that power is one of those things that we expect 100% service. So when it's less than 100%, it might as well be zero. And so it would seem to me that what actually happened here was that for whatever reason, you guys underestimated your near-term power requirements and weren't able to do something in advance to prohibit that condition from existing. If in fact this was just not to mitigate the seriousness of it, but if it was just an overload problem, it would just seem to me that given the change in the weather, the number of people, and the day-by-day power requirements that you've been experiencing leading up to the 26th, that somebody kind of fell asleep at the switch to say, hey guys, we're running the risk of being in an overload situation. And so that's the part that I think concerns me, is that as big and sophisticated as the power company is, you didn't anticipate that potential failure. And then you got caught short, and the recovery time took a while, whether it be a cold load start or whatever it is. and it just took a while. So is that a fair assessment? And I'm not being, I mean, it's going to happen, but is that basically in a nutshell what happened on the 26th?
That's probably pretty accurate. I guess I would, and probably some of them I've already said, but I would again, not as a matter of excuse. Please don't take it that way. I don't mean it that way, but we had project. By the way, you make a good, excellent point about the different projections. So anytime we have a scenario that involves switching, and we're looking at the time frame, we do look at the loads at that time period and what we expect. So there was a completely different study done, right, for the period that we're talking about, to back feed things to the way they were. Again, in a nutshell, we expected to get this sub online before we saw sub-freezing weather, and the delays at really right there at the end, even the superintendent over the contracted project was out with COVID. So we had those situations that unexpectedly delayed it, even beyond what we've had previous. I've been here 35 years. I've never had, this is not an excuse, God, please don't, but I've never had this many people all of a sudden be out of work, or things take so long to get as what we have seen in 2020.
I get all of that, and I appreciate the concerns there. But if I mean, we knew that on the 26th, we knew that the weather was going to be well below freezing, and was going to probably kill a bunch of plants in our yards. We knew that before Christmas, and so if you guys knew that you were going to be short of power transformers because you had this system down for construction purposes, and you're listening to the same weather forecasts that we are, probably some more sophisticated, you guys probably have your own weather forecaster. And so I guess my again, not to beat a dead horse, but it would seem to me that that with all you had going on from a construction standpoint, that you just didn't anticipate the surge in demand, and you had a system failure as a result. Now, if you buy that, then let me ask this question. If Lagreeville had not been under construction and the same weather and power surge requirements had been experienced, would we have just had a briefer outage for it to switch, or does that switching occur completely automatically?
You're talking about the way Lagreeville sub was before the construction. You mean like?
Yeah. Would we have lost power on the 26th if the Lagreeville project was completed and everything was in place? Would we have lost power for, say, just an hour while you guys switched to a different source? Or because I think that then goes back to the inability to anticipate the demand requirement.
Yeah, so plainly, if the Lagreeville sub had not been out of service and everything had been being served the way it was being served, we would not have had I don't believe we would have had a power transformer trip out due to load. Yeah, so no, I don't believe it would have. I can't guarantee it would have tripped out for some other. We don't know if we would have had any outages or not. But no, I don't believe what we saw would happen. So like we started out, I think in the beginning, when we all pulled together Monday morning, and instead of the, after having had what we had, I think I mentioned earlier, we will be hard fast. We won't even trust the weather forecast, because I've been in this area all my life. I've been working here 35 years, and we cut up about the fact you almost have to take a suitcase with you in South Carolina because you go through all seasons in one day. And frankly, I've seen the weather forecast just can be completely wrong. So the bottom line is, for us, in our history though, we have never seen obviously below freezing weather in November. If we did, I can't remember it. So again, our hard, fast rule going forward will be, again, if we have any situation like this, so I expect less, would be that if that station cannot be put on in November, right, we will either stop the project and put back in service what was in service, or we will have a mobile sub in place. Okay, so the November, and that's a lot of history and a lot of experience. I understand hurricanes and things like that, but we do have to pay attention to load, because load's going to be there, whether we ever have a hurricane, storm, or a tornado, or a thunderstorm. Load you got to deal with day in and day out, and it goes up and down, and so we have to look at load, and then also be able to be concerned about all the other environmental situations that we face. So yes, sir, we would, hindsight, honest to goodness, we probably all of us would have put the mobile there in November. We
So
did not
I guess
expect-
the device at the Kiowa substation or the Seabrook station that experienced the overload, when it went into that overload situation, was anybody at Berkeley surprised by that? Because I guess my feeling is you shouldn't have been.
Yeah, to some degree we were. We did not expect the load to rise to that level. If we had, we would have, at that point now, once you get into that cold spell and you don't have a mobile in place, right? Or you don't have something else, we would have had to, frankly, do some brownout. We'd had to go somewhere and turn something off, right? Because again, I go back to the switching. One of the things you have to be real careful about is you start switching with a lot of load. So you try not to do too much of that. But so and when we say, by the way, when we say overload, I want to clarify a little something. Is it wasn't that it was in danger of blowing up or burning up or anything. We have protective equipment on those transformers, and it's set at a particular setting to avoid going into overload. So those mechanisms work like they were supposed to, so you don't have a failure. But I just want to make sure we realize that we didn't have a situation where the transformer was about to fail.
If I could just make one more comment on this autopsy that we're doing, in that I think I would direct this to, I think her name is Libby, who's the communications director or manager. We got almost no information from Berkeley, and I went to their website multiple times, and the town only sent out, I think, what they knew at the time that they got from Berkeley, and I think a better job could have been done of communicating what was going on, what expected timelines were doing, and what were the issues that you were running into, and just keeping people better informed, because I think that's a lot of the frustration as well, is everybody was expecting, oh, Berkeley's out. They're usually out for an hour or two, and then it's cold and it's cold and it's cold, and everybody's getting a little angry. Nobody's watching TV. Nobody's watching the internet. It's irritating, and so I think a little better communication would be in order.
I appreciate it.
So Tim, I would say that the letter that you wrote was a very well done letter. It was clear. I might not have understood everything, but it's very clear. And Scott, not to put words in your mouth, but I'm thinking what Scott's saying is if we'd have known a little bit of that kind of information during the course of this event, it would have put people way more at ease than they were.
I just to comment on what Scott and John are talking about, Tim, two things. As a matter of practice, when you go through one of these exercises where you're making substantive changes to your electrical distribution, these are my words, and maybe they're not the necessary words, but I feel as though that the community is somewhat at risk. Things just aren't in the normal condition. Do you let the community know? Do you let your subscribers know that things are going on here at Berkeley? We're trying to make things better, but you're effectively going to be somewhat at risk. Because two, our responsibility as council is the health and well-being of this community. So granted, everybody was inconvenienced. It was a miserable day, But honestly, I was more worried about something untoward's happening. A patient that has home dialysis, patients on respiratory, whatever. No one knew what to do. So for my wife and I, we just got extra sweaters and blankets. So we were fine. But I kept thinking, wonder if somebody was hooked up to something. We as the town council responsible for this, we didn't know what to say to people. And that's really what that gnaws at me, Tim. I mean, I understand all of this and the remedial actions that you're taking, but following up again on what we or other communities have to be told, understanding what Berkeley may be going through, just to let the community know something may take place. And I just think that's, I'm just, well, fortuitously, I don't know of any bad health event. I've not heard of any. So I'm assuming we would have heard by now if something would have happened that day of the 26th. So.
Yes, sir. Point taken and completely understand. One thing that was going through my head as you were talking is I don't know, Bert, Tony, how often you guys, if you go to every town council meeting, or I'm not sure what you'll do in the future, but maybe we can get in the mode of do y'all meet monthly? Is that what y'all do, or?
Yeah, they meet monthly.
Yeah, maybe we can
I would think public safety would be the place to do that, though.
Let me start. Bert, will you and Libby jump in real quick and just talk through what your communication that day did look like, so that we can, and then we'll take a second to address maybe how it could look better. But when do you jump in on that?
Sure. Well, that morning we started calling everybody that would be immediately affected. I think I conversated with Stephanie, golly, it was through text, email, anything that was drafted from Libby was presented to Stephanie on multiple occasions. I spoke with Stephanie throughout the day, or throughout the morning, throughout the day, and until the last connection was made, I checked with her as well. So, and we probably could have done a little better job of maybe getting it out quicker, but I stayed in contact with Stephanie multiple times. And is that right, Stephanie? Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's correct. Bert and I stayed in communication via text, email, or phone call. I then would, any information that they sent to us that they wanted us to distribute out to the community, he would send it to me, and then I would work with Stephanie Braswell, our manager, and then we would send information out. I know there's been some questions in terms of the town response. We can only respond once we get information from Berkeley Electric, because we don't know what to tell their consumers until they draft up whatever report that they like to draft. And then what we do is we push it out via e-blast, and we'll say, this is a message from Berkeley Electric. So and that's why we continue to encourage people to sign up for our e-blast. One of the things that I'm not sure, and Stephanie can comment on this, is typically Kika, who has access to all owners' typically email addresses, they pick up our information. I don't know if they're picking up information on the weekends, because if this information is going out after 5 o'clock on weekends, it's just the town pushing it out. Kika may not have picked it up at that time. So I then stay in communication with both the mayor and mayor pro tem throughout the process.
And Libby and I did reach out to Kika as well. We even reached out to Seabrook as well too.
So, and Libby, you probably sent, I could be wrong, but I feel like throughout the course of the day, I saw 6 or 7 different updates that were coming in every couple hours that, Tim, you were writing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was, again, Scott, Bennett, and Thomas were in the heat of the battle. They were over there trying to get things on, and working with Chris Rutledge, our system engineer, where they could put what. But I was trying to, relay what I knew from them to Libby and I think Micah as things changed. It was pretty dynamic that day, quite frankly. I mean, it was very dynamic, and probably about the time you give an update as to what was on or what was off, it would change, in the next 30 minutes. So it was very dynamic. But we try to give updates.
Tony or Libby, one of the questions that was asked was that it appears that some of your customers receive some sort of notice or message on the 25th asking them to reduce their power usage, but then there's some concern that not everyone received that message. Was there such a message sent out? And if so, was it limited to only some customers, not all your customers?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Libby, real quick, before you jump on that one, I just want to add something to the last question. Mayor, just so that you know, so Bert just took over for me. I had Bert's job for 5 years. So Bert manages our key accounts and he manages all of our government relations. We have 15 towns or cities that we serve. And the way we orchestrate the information flow during a outage is Bert has single point of contact. We get inundated with residents who want to know and they want to be in the know immediately. And so we have found that the easiest way to handle the flow of information is Bert passes that along to whoever that town decides is their point of contact. So for Kiowa or Seabrook, it's the town administrator. And then he also starts to text chain with Sanctuary or the Country Club or whatever key accounts or commercial entities are also affected by that outage. But we give it to, we try to keep that streamlined. We try to give that information to the town and then let it get shotgun blasted how you see fit to the residents. On the flip side, Libby's team is working social media and getting it out on as many platforms as we can. But as far as direct communication with any town, any of the 15 towns that we serve, whether it's Kiowa, Seabrook, Goose Creek, Musk Corner, Allendale, anything, Bert tries to relay that information every couple hours to the town. And then we want to, and it's not a pawning it to you, it's a letting you get that information out to your residents how you see fit, whether that's through e-blast or through your own newspaper sources or through your own social media, so that Bert doesn't have 9 people who, hey, I have this job with the HOA. Hey, I live on this street and I'm kind of the unofficial mayor of this cul-de-sac. We get so many people that want the information that we've kind of started, we had to set up this process of give the information to one person at the town, let it go out from there, unless we see that that's not working. But that's kind of how we've done it in the past. And from our side, that is the best way to get the information into town's hands.
Can I just ask a question, Tony and Libby?
Sure.
So considering the fact that our residents are your customers, you obviously have some sort of email communication, since some people did get some information about the 25th. Because I'm not on that list, I didn't know, did you actually send out information to your users that are Kiowa, Seabrook, or that were affected by this outage? Because while Tony makes a good point that it's great to let the town know and officials know so that we can help get the message out, the issue is if it's coming secondhand information, I guess I'm just wondering what your communication methods were with the people that were experiencing the outage.
Tony, I'm happy to answer that.
Sure.
The best way for members direct information.
Libby, you're breaking up. Or we can't.
Direct line.
We cannot hear your audio.
Sorry.
Try it again.
The best way for our members, no matter where they live, to get the most up-to-date information about the cooperative is on our social media platforms. Facebook is our most popular, Instagram or Twitter are all good sources of information. And like Tony was saying, you know, we have a different filtration system where we send information out. My team is working those direct sources on social media. Bert is working his key accounts and government relations channels. And at any time, if you're not getting the information that the members need, you can work back up through those channels. So Stephanie, if you're not getting the information you need for Kiowa, you can call up Bert and he will try to get as much information as possible. And same way on social media. We, if we get multiple inquiries about things, we know that this is something that a lot of people are interested in and start working very hard to get that information out to our members as quickly as possible. And we're as focused as you are on having detailed, accurate information passed out in a timely fashion. So we are very much all hands on deck in any type of major communications situation.
So
to
what is the mechanism that you communicate with for people that do not have social media?
Exactly my point. Particularly when power's out, Facebook is loaded on the desktop, nowhere else.
It's available on your smartphone.
It is, but it's not loaded on my smartphone. Yeah, I mean that's just me.
So
Again,
would you be I mean, if you're not getting email on your desktop, if we were to send an email, you would be running into the same problem. We want everyone to load our app, load our smart hub. Well, that's what I'm saying. With social media, I was literally just pulling up Micah's emails. He was every hour and a half, as many times as he could. He was trying to get the emails or trying to get the updates out on as many social media platforms as we can. And maybe that's something we can do. Maybe we can get Micah to Libby type something up, something we can put in the town's hands that shows very easily how all residents can download multiple ways on their phone to keep up with us during an outage. Maybe that's the gap. Maybe that's what we're seeing.
That would be very helpful.
Okay, we can do that. We can get something together to just show any of these things, how to get on board with it, how to like us, how to be able to follow us on social media so that you can get that information immediately.
Yeah, from my perspective, I didn't even know you were on social media. That's the reason why I alluded to, I was going to your website, which is the only venue I need to go look. And there was just nothing there other than you could go to the outage map, but that didn't help me in terms of knowing what was going on.
Sure. Well, and unfortunately, we see that all the time. Libby tracks our social media following, and after storms, we see how many people follow us go up because you don't need us until you need us. And so, Libby, we can get something together that shows them all the different ways to follow us, correct?
Yes, absolutely. We'd be happy to do that. And that's also why we lean on Bert's function of communicating with the different town and community officials to know that not everybody is connected like other people are. So it's, again, up to whatever the culture of that community is to help spread the word in these situations. In a hurricane situation, you have TV or radio helping out, but for this type of instance, we had to rely on those two main channels, our social media and then our key accounts government relations.
Libby, I have a question, and I know this is tough because of you guys' customer base, but when it's isolated like it was in this particular storm, I know, Stephanie, during our hurricane, we have signed up for what's called Red Code.
Code Red.
Code Red. Do you guys have some ability to do that, or do like a reverse 911? So because when my power went out on Johns Island because of the wind, for whatever reason, I couldn't even, my Verizon wouldn't work in my home. So I couldn't, well, in terms of I can call out, but I couldn't access the internet. So I had to step outdoors and call a friend and ask them to go to you guys' website to try to figure out what was going on. So is there a way, because I know once you call, it states that if you want to call back, press 1 or something. So there's a way for Berkeley Electric to call your cell. Is that a program that you guys have the ability? So for some people who don't have access to their internet?
Variety of communications abilities that I can look into further. Again, if it's cell service dependent or internet service dependent, it might be tricky, but I can further investigate that. And I'd be happy to share my contact information. If anybody has other ideas that they'd like to discuss, I'd be happy to discuss that going forward. We did have a similar meeting to this the Monday after this outage to discuss communications channels, flow of information. So we're always looking to get better and serve our members better. To go back to the question of the text message about lowering usage on the 25th, that is part of a program called Beat the Peak. And members of any location can sign up for that, and they receive notifications when we're expecting large levels of usage. And if they could shift running the dryer to a different part of the day outside of the peak demand times, that helps all the members, because I'm probably not the best person to explain this, but levels of demand affect our pricing. So at a wholesale level. So if we can curb demand unrelated to this situation throughout the year, not just in wintertime, summertime as well, that helps all of our members. So we encourage members to sign up for these text alerts, but it is subscription based, and every member who had signed up for it system-wide received that same notification. So it wasn't just Kiowa exclusive.
If we could pause for just a moment, Stephanie, if there's questions from the.
I was going to have you
Yeah.
pull up the questions so you can ask them the questions.
Yeah.
How do you do it? There you go. So if you want to go through and ask them some,
Okay.
I'll go through your questions. You can move it aside.
Do I just read them?
Yeah, you can just read them if you like.
Okay, these are questions that came in from the community. I guess we'll have to all judge collectively if they've been answered. Why did Berkeley not anticipate the loading issue given the predicted weather? I don't want to cut anybody short. I don't know if but I don't want to. Well, anyway, that was a question. Why did Berkeley not have a backup transformer available? I do know that's been answered. Why didn't Berkeley follow the proposed protocol they set out in their letter about how they could handle it in the future? The last time we had significant outage after the storm a few years ago, many of the smaller step-down transformers had to be replaced. When was the last time an inventory of all the equipment on Kiowa was done? And is there a plan to replace older units proactively? That was from one citizen.
Why don't we just stop there, John, and see in that first block of questions, if Berkeley, you guys can see the questions as well. Is there anything you want to add to those 4 questions?
Can they see these now, Stephanie?
Yeah, everyone can. Everyone have the ability under, it says Q&A.
Oh, okay.
At the bottom of your screen, the bottom of your left Q&A, if you open that up, you'll see all the questions.
Okay.
And so if you want to take the first block of questions, if there was, some in there that you can answer, whoever want to take a stab at it with BEC, we would greatly appreciate it. And some of these questions may have already been answered, and if so, you can say they've been addressed or however you'd like to do that.
Mayor, did you want me to take a stab at it, I guess?
Yes, please.
Yeah, again.
And again, if y'all think I think something's been answered, correct me, okay? I do think that very first question about I think we've covered the loading, backup transformer, and why didn't we follow the proposed protocol set out in their letter about how they would handle it in the future? Well, again, gosh, I hate to use this term, but hindsight's 2020. So we will, if we ever have this situation again, certainly we will intend to have a mobile in place. So I think we've talked about that. Yeah, we always learn, sometimes through school hard knocks. I'm not sure about the smaller step down transformers being replaced a few years ago, but not what they're addressing, but we have inventoried all of the equipment on Kiowa Island. I'm talking about the transformers, the green boxes you see. And so within the last few years, and we do have a priority list as to when, those things are being changed out. Scott, do you have anything to add on that as far as changing out distribution equipment on the island?
Yeah, I'd say in the past year and a half, we have replaced, give or take, a dozen or so, probably 300 pieces of equipment on the front half of the island. And when I say front half, I mean between the first guard gate and the second guard gate. I currently have sheets drawn up for additional replacements, probably in the neighborhood of 100 pieces of equipment that are on the back half of the island, past the second guard gate. We typically try to do those equipment change outs outside of peak season for Kiowa, when there's less folks on the island outside of summertime, which would be kind of in this time period here, but we've held off on that because of the islands being backfed. the feeds are backwards and different, and it makes it a little more complicated to change out equipment because we're having to kill power in certain areas, and it can get a little complicated. So we were waiting until the substation is back in play and we have normal feeds, and we will resume replacing that equipment. That equipment includes the single-phase power transformers that feed the individual homes, the three-phase transformers that feed businesses, and numerous handholds, pedestals, things that have just aged and are starting to deteriorate and could potentially be hazardous.
Okay.
We are proactively changing out equipment as time permits.
Yeah, so related to that, we have what we call an underground inspection and testing program. Contractor that goes around each one of those pieces of equipment. They open them up, they test them, and shoot them with an infrared camera, and identify based on a priority basis, which goes to Scott and his folks, and they change them out, like he said. Instead of me trying to pronounce the names and mess around, I'm gonna use the time. So at 11:12 a.m. question.
Yeah. 11:12. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steph.
I was just going to say, yeah, the 11:12 question from Philip. He just asked again with regards to communication. And he just thinks that between the town and Berkeley Electric, we can improve on the communication.
Let me just say real quick. So I just looked at the post. Micah, who reports to Libby, his updates were 7:55, 9:25, 9:45, 10:50, 11, 1, 4, 7, 8:15, 9:45. He was all over it that day. And that's why the more people we can get to follow us on the social media, the better off we can be. You guys are an interesting. I don't know how this happened. You guys probably hate it more than I do. Out of the 15 towns we serve, somehow along the way, Seabrook and Kiowa, a pattern was set where lots of your residents depend on you to get them information. You drew the short straw. We have towns that when they lose power, they never call they blow us up immediately on the call center. I don't know how y'all ended up in the middle of that. I hate it for you. I really do. And so I want to help you out with that situation where they immediately turn to you to tell them what is going on with their power company. Not a fair situation for you to be in. But we want to help you with that as much as we can. And so part of it is that is where the information is. That is the most up-to-date way to get information is social media. The second part of that is it takes you out of the loop. It doesn't make you have to be the bad guy to anyone. We want you as much as possible to just put residents in direct contact with Berkeley Co-op so that they are not expecting the town to give them updates every 2 hours. Therefore, they're frustrated with you if you don't hear from Bert. We don't mind being the direct contact to our residents, just like we do with every other town during these outages. And somehow we've built this pattern with Seabrook and Kiowa that they just come through you. And they put you in a position that you don't have access to the information. And so they're probably twice as frustrated with you as you are with us. And so the more we can, especially on the weekends, some of you don't even live on the island, the more we can take you out of the loop and get them through all of our platforms directly in contact with us, I think the members will be more satisfied with that because they are getting the information as soon as it is posted. Less can be lost in translation, and it takes the pressure off of you to do a job that you never signed up to do.
If I could just say,
I think that may be a laudable goal, but that isn't going to happen in the near term. I'm not even certain in the medium-sized term. So I think you need to understand this community, our community. I had no idea that that's how you guys were communicating it. I too was looking for the town. I mean, I was getting phone calls from Stephanie, but I didn't know about your app and all those types of things. So that's just me. I think you better continue to assume that the folks here on Kiowa are going to be relying on the town, and we will do everything we can to disseminate it as best as we can from what we hear from you. So anyway.
I'd also like to weigh in on something that just got an email from Courtney who said, try turning off my Wi-Fi and getting cell service that way. Well, I don't know about anybody else, but without Wi-Fi, I have no cell service. I live on an end of the island where there is no cell service whatsoever. I have to get in my car and drive into East Beach before I can even get one bar off of Verizon. So, I mean, we're just dead in my end of town.
Okay, and I think, Tony, from what I hear and from Libby, is any information that you guys can share with me, I can get it to Stephanie. There's your social media pages. We understand that a lot of people are not on it, but also that what Libby talked about, which I think was Beat the Pete or something like that, which is why only some people got notified on the 25th, because you had to sign up for that. If you didn't sign up for it, then you didn't get notified. But anything you can send to us, as the mayor said, we will continue to help push out information as you guys forward to us. But also understand that if you guys are pushing information out during outages, Brett, if you let me know, we can make sure that we can direct people to your social media page or wherever they need to go to get updated information, just in case we're not updated for 3 or 4 hours. Someone can go and they can look at the information themselves. Let's move on to the next question. This comes from Miss Wendy Kulik. She said, if I remember correctly, looking at the outage map during the outage, not that many people on Seabrook Island lost power. If the Seabrook Substation was involved in the outage, why was Seabrook almost entirely suffering from a power outage? Maybe I just don't understand the routing system. Maybe she said, I'm not sure Seabrook was suffering at all, but maybe they were suffering like not as much, but that was her question. You guys can see that. Anyone like to take that? Tim, you're muted still.
Sorry about that. Excuse me. So Seabrook Sub has 2 power transformers. One of them, by the way, that sub's designed, probably most of the feeders out of it go to Seabrook. The other one that ended up going out, most of the feeders out of it go to Kiowa, but we did have the load balance as good as we could between those 2 transformers. So as it turned out, the transformer that went out was serving Kiowa more than it was Seabrook. That's what I have.
Okay. The next question, I think a lot of it was answered, but on 11/27, this is from Philip. We talked about the hurricane season, I think already. Do you think that you guys addressed that? And the question of using historical loading versus recognizing the island has been consistently crowded and the weather was predicted. Why did Berkeley Electric not plan for this? And why does BEC only have 1 mobile unit given the service area? And I think you guys may have addressed that, but if you think there's anything else you'd like to add or comment on, please feel free to do so.
I think, y'all correct me, I think we've addressed most of that. I will just again repeat, we're in hurricane zone and we don't ever know. We don't know if we're going to get it or we're not going to get it. So as much as we would love to not do anything during hurricane season, we can't operate in that premise. We have to keep doing and upgrading and building the best time we can. We did not get hit by a hurricane this year. We were blessed to be able to help our friends in Louisiana in over a 5 or 6 week period, sent linemen over that way to help them. And maybe if we ever, hopefully we don't ever get hit, but if we do, they'll return that favor. But it's just too unpredictable. You don't know if you're going to get it or not.
Okay. I think we talked about the updates. The town, we pushed out the updates in terms of the official information. We push it out as Berkeley Electric is sending it to us. But I think we talked about a great deal today about communication and ways of keeping the public informed. Is there anything else anyone would like to add to that? Anyone from council or Berkeley Electric? No? Okay, the next question is from Wendy at 11:56. If updates were posted on social media, why didn't, I think this is just, we've talked about this. Again, we will work, I think Berkeley Electric, between Burke and I, we will make sure that we are getting that information and letting the customers know where they can find it. The question is from Kathy Humphrey, who could not be here, who didn't sign up to submit questions. Please talk about the lessons learned and what you're going to do in the future.
Well, Stephanie and Tim, at the least, we'll get back with you in terms of whether it's public safety or public works, but at the least, I think I would ask that you become regular attendees at those meetings. I think you're going through some dynamic times yourself based upon the growth the growth in the broadest community, and certainly what you're doing, so that everybody's aware of that, from a council perspective. And then I think we're all learning a lot about this communication in terms of the vehicles that are already underway, and figure out better ways or how do we improve that. So I think there are a lot of lessons learned from this. So we need to summarize those and discuss those, and as are you, and communicate that all to the community. So we'll have to keep talking about that.
There was one last question, I think, on here, and we will get with Wendy. Maybe Wendy needs to contact Berkeley Electric. Wendy, she said that she normally receives Beat the Peak notices, but for some reason she didn't receive the notification on the 25th. She said, any idea why? Of course, I'm guessing you guys can't answer that. That's probably something that she may have to contact Berkeley Electric on. Is that where you guys should direct her?
Yeah, I can contact Wendy. I'll look her up, but normally a lot of times we get these answers before, and it goes more to spam, or I've had a lot of these issues before, but I'll contact Wendy so you can take that off your list.
Okay, great.
Stephanie, I just want to reiterate real quick for the Beat the Peak, and I know we've said it, I just want to say it again for everyone who's watching. No matter what the peak is that day, we ask people during that time to kind of cartel they're using, because it helps with how we buy power from Santee Cooper. And so I want to make sure no one believes that these two incidents were connected, that we saw load was going up because it was getting cold. So we started sending texts asking people not to use juice instead of figuring out how to solve our substation issue. I could see how if you got those two events on 2 different days, you might think they were connected, and they're not at all. That you would have gotten the Beat the Peak text regardless of what happened the next day. So that wasn't us trying to figure out how we're going to create more juice because it was getting cold, and then all of a sudden the sub crashed. They just unrelated events, and I want to make sure that's said clearly.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure. This last question states that I would anticipate electric cars such as Teslas powering up and Christmas lights next December. This would override the historical data, given the new surge in popularity on the island. So I'm not sure. I guess her question is that in terms of your future trends and long-term plans, have you considered the increased use of electric cars and next year for Christmas with lights and everything?
Well, it's not just Christmas. I think it's going to be all year. There's just the same number of people, but it's going to be more power needs.
Right. That was the last question.
I think we've addressed that about the substation being twice as much now. So I think that was addressed.
Great. Okay, that was all the questions, Mayor, that came in.
Okay. Well, thank you all. This has been a very important meeting, and I think we all learned a lot, from both sides. So again, Tony, we'll get back with you in terms of the attendance at meetings, when and where and who and all that type of thing. But I think that would be a very, very valuable start. And I guess Stephanie and Libby to continue to talk about how we communicate, when we communicate, the vehicle used for communication. I don't want to say we apologize for being one of your communities that don't use social media as much as others, but I think that's the way it's going to be here. So I think we'll have to just, continue to do, work with what we have, and that will be fine. So unless everybody has any other comments or questions, we can have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you guys at Berkeley for participating in this. I think it's good that you've come to the table, and we appreciate you're only human as well, but we've all learned some lessons here.
Sure, thank you. Thank all of you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Okay.
And very valuable.